All right. So if we want to predict what kind of compound is formed between a metal and a non-metal, we have to remember these typical charges that metals will form if they form a cation, and the typical charges non-metals will form when they form an anion. So group 1A elements tend to form a +1 charge. Group 2A form a +2 charge. In 3A, aluminum is going to form a +3 charge. Group 5A, a -3 charge. 6A, a -2. 7A, a -1. Right? Because by gaining one more electron, then they have 8, which is the noble gas configuration. 6A, if it gains 2 electrons, it has 8. 5A, if it gains 3, it has 8 valence electrons. And so by forming those charges, by getting the extra electrons, then they have a full valence shell. And the other ones you'll need to remember are this little backwards L here. Zinc always forms a +2, cadmium a +2, and silver a +1. So the other metals here tend to form some variable charges, so we can't always predict what those charges will be. And this also is important when it comes to naming compounds later in the course. So, for example, if we were to say predict what kind of ionic compound would be formed between calcium and chlorine, what we'd have to do is figure out the charge on these two these two elements are likely to form if they form an ion. So calcium is here in group 2A, so we expect calcium to form a 2+ charge. Chlorine is a halogen in group 7A, so we expect it to form a -1 charge. Now, when they form a compound, the compound is neutral, so the positive charge from the cation has to be balanced with negative charge from the anion. So what we have to do is figure out the ratio that these are going to go together so that they end up with a 0 overall charge. Right? And one quick way to do this is what's referred to as the cross-multiplying method. So if we have a 2 up here, we draw an arrow and say we're going to need a 2 over here. If we have a 1 up here, we draw an arrow and say we're going to need a 1 there. So we need 1 calcium and 2 chlorine. And so that's how calcium chloride would form. So that's one way of doing it. The other way of doing it is if we have a calcium 2+ and chlorine with a -1, is to say what's the least common multiple, right? And so both 1 and 2 go into 2, so we know we need a 2 charge on each, the cation and the anion, to balance each other out. So what we need is a +2 in the end and a -2. And those will equal 0 when they come together. So if we have 1 calcium cation, it already has a +2. If we have 1 chlorine, it has a -1, so we need 2 -1s to get to -2. So this tells us we need 1 calcium and 2 chlorine to go together, and it gives us that same formula of calcium chloride. So if we do the same thing, if we say, well, what if we have aluminum and it gets together with oxygen, what ionic compound is going to form between aluminum and oxygen? And so again, the first thing we need to do is figure out what charge is going to be on aluminum and what charge is going to be on the oxygen. So over here, aluminum is in our group 3A. It always forms a +3, so we're going to have a 3+ charge. Oxygen is in group 6A, so it's going to have a -2. So the quick way to do it, cross multiply. Our 3 goes here. Our 2 goes there, so our formula is Al2O3. Right, and if we do it the more accounting way, I guess you would say, is we find the least common multiple. So 2 does not go into 3, so the next multiple of 3 is 6. 2 goes into 6, so we need a +6 charge and a -6 charge overall, right? And so if 1 aluminum brings us a 3+, to get to 6+, we need 2 aluminums. 1 oxygen brings us a 2-, to get to a 6-, we need 3 of those. So we need 2 aluminum and 3 oxygen, so we end up with Al2O3. So you come up with the same answer both ways you do it there. But let me show you one difficulty with the cross-multiplying method. if we say what kind of ionic compound is going to form between calcium and oxygen, so again we have to find the charge that these metals are likely to form if they become ions. So calcium is here in group 2A, so it's going to want to form a +2 charge. Oxygen again is in 6A, so it's going to want to form a -2. So if we do this cross multiplying, it's going to say we need a 2 here and a 2 here, and so we have Ca2O2, which is not technically correct because we need the smallest ratio. So if you end up with numbers like this, then you need to divide the numbers, and so we need one of each. So it's just 1 calcium and 1 oxygen. So if you have the same charge, you should recognize that they go together 1 to 1, and then you don't even need to do the cross multiplying at all. You should recognize that the positive charge is already equal to the negative charge, so they're going to go together 1 to 1. But if we do it the other way, we say, well, they're both multiples of 2, so we need a +2 and a -2 to equal 0. So 1 calcium gives us a +2, 1 oxygen gives us a -2, so we need 1 calcium and 1 oxygen. So that's how you go about predicting the compound that will form between a metal and a non-metal if they form ions.